Yo, what is up everybody? Rulings can be hard sometimes, especially learning a new trading card game. Some of the nuances get kind of lost in the weeds, and there's always something that you go, wait, it works that way? So today we are here to steal a bit. So I'm kind of taking inspiration from one of my fellow Amperawatt teammates, where he does Twitter threads, that's MPT if you don't know. And I'm taking a look at the Reddit thread I posted and pinned to the Reddit the other day, asking for basically ruling questions. And there's some really interesting things here, and I think a lot of people can learn from it. So let's jump into it. Starting with a question that I asked. I did seed a few questions here to get the ball rolling, so to speak, and this is a pretty common question and something I think everyone should know about. If my opponent attacks me with a Hydrate, can I cast Gorgon's Gaze to keep its effect from activating, but also let it destroy itself in battle? And the answer is yes. So you can both stop an attack, since if you negate or remove the ability of an Elestral from attacking during the attack step, you will cause it to no longer be able to finish the attack, and the attack will stop. So in the attack step, if you Tsunami it, it'll stop. You Gorgon's Gaze it, it will stop. Then the second step of battle is your battle step, where you no longer can change the position of an Elestral, and it must continue its attack. It will always hit, and if somehow an Elestral that it's attacking is removed from play in the battle step, it'll become a direct hit. However, the main thing about battle step here is if you Gorgon's Gaze a Hydrate in the battle step, so both players say the attack is good, you say battle step, Gorgon's Gaze your Hydrate, it will lose its ability, continue the attack, probably crash and die, and not use its ability. This is also relevant for things like Foamy. You can let the attack go through, press it so it can't act. So you can turn Gorgons into removal in that way. It's a pretty interesting kind of niche interaction. The attack step, battle step, damage step interactions, it's good to know for most players. It also works again with DAT buffs like Tectorus and Valkyries and Neblio down the line. Next up, we have a question about Dense Fog, a new card for Daybreak. When can I interrupt an Celestial effect with Dense Fog? Also, what's the difference between if you do and when you do? So starting with the Dense Fog question, Dense Fog, unlike Gorgons, does not negate abilities already in the chain. So in order to stop an Elestral from using an ability with Dense Fog, you have to activate it preemptively before they go to activate an effect. So let's say your opponent plays an Equalinx and you want to keep it from Nexusing or popping a rune. So to keep it from Nexusing, you'll have to cast Dense Fog in the response window after Equalinx is cast, and making it unable to actually activate the Nexus effect. However, also with Nexus Celestials, you can let them activate the Nexus ability, put that Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2 Dense Fog, they will still get to Nexus since it's already activated on the chain, but the second effect will be suppressed before it can happen and unable to act. So that's actually something interesting to do. This also works for things with anything with a you can effect. That's something that you have to activate manually, but this won't work for receives and cast triggers. Those will automatically be added to chain before you can chain Dense Fog. As far as if you do and when you do, if card effects tell you that the effect A, if you do effect B, is a singular effect that resolves in the same chain link, so applying B is relying on the performing effect A. If I tell you effect A when you do effect B, then there's two different effects, and one is conditional that's looking for the resolution of A to happen. That's your Nexus Celestial. Whereas the if you do is generally things like Altar the Stars, Circle the Sky, usually runes in that case. And then we're going back to me seeding questions again. This is actually really interesting. If I have a Spinosect in attack position, so Spinosect says that if you are in defense position, you can attack with it using its defense. But if I'm in attack position with one attack and I declare my attack, my opponent decides to Tsunami my Spinosect for whatever reason to push it to defense, am I still attacking? Am I using my own on my defense stat? Or am I using my attack stat still since the attack started? Or do I have to redeclare my attack because the attack is negated, but I have to redeclare the new attack? I was a little curious. This question's come up multiple times, and I just forgot the answer. So the attack wouldn't be interrupted, and it would start using Spinosect's defense rather than its attack. So it's still attacking, but now it's in defense. You're using its defense. It's a passive effect, effectively, and that's really interesting. So don't Tsunami your Spinosects. And don't put Spinosect in attack position to begin with, because that's kind of useless on Spinosect, but you never know. Maybe it gets Altard or something, and you Tsunami your Spinosect back into defense so it doesn't pop itself. Something to think about. Or your opponent might alter your Spinosect from defense to attack position to pop it, and you need to go Tsunami back, and vice versa. It'd be interesting, niche, but hey, it's an interesting question. And then this is my last question that I put in here. How does Soulbell ascend to Soul Stocks from his Foretell effect? Am I casting while foretelling? Because this question's come up a lot in Elestrals or a lot with Daybreak questions. Soulbell doesn't have an active or conditional effect. It is a static effect that modifies what Apollo does. And then the effect that allows you to special cast Soul Stocks will then be the following chain. So if you say, oh, I found this card while I'm foretelling, I'm going to special send into it. You say, I'm going to special send to the Soul Stocks. The foretell finishes. Soul Stocks is in limbo. And then on the next chain is the actual Ascension chain. A little bit weird, but it is how pretty much all the foretell effects work when they're casting something from foretell. So Soul Stocks will be its own chain separate, but by the time you get to that chain link, Soul Stocks will have removed Soul Bell from play, so you can't Gorgons there to negate the Ascension still. You'll have to Gorgon Soul Bell before the foretell even starts, or it's too late, just something to be aware of. If Viserys battles another Elestral and both are destroyed in that battle, can Viserys activate its effect? So yes, if an Elestral is in battle while it's destroying, you can still trigger its effect. So if two Viserys crash into each other, both players are going to get to look for their extra Viserys to put them into play. It's basically just how foaming works. When foaming is destroyed, it still activates its effect. So generally, death and attack and destruction triggers will still trigger even if something's going to the underworld and no longer enchanted. That's a common question that people come up is, hey, how are my underworld triggers happening when they're misenchanted in the underworld? And the short answer is things know that they were properly enchanted at the time without getting too complicated there. Next up, if I use a spirit on board to cast Altar of the Stars, can I next a spirit off Altar to an Elestral on board? No, you cannot. Runes are, or rather, instant runes, so counters and invoke falls under the category of an instant rune. They cannot be nexus to or from because they're technically not physically on the board. They do need a space to resolve in, but they're not physically put on the board ever. They are sent basically from limbo to the underworld, so their spirits are still in limbo. You can't nexus spirits off a limbo. You cannot nexus spirits off Circle of the Sky or Altar of the Stars during the resolutions. Alright, next up, if you attack with Hydrake and it dies, you special cast Twindra. Can you attack with the new summon Twindra all in the same turn? Same thing goes for if you chain and summon Pantera. Yes, you can. The most common way to get Pantera out in the game is to go Hydrake into a 5-attack body, special Twindra out, Twindra into a 5-attack body to trade Twindra for the 5-attacker, and then you drop Pantera into play after that and punch for more damage. That's 6 spirits effectively because you're special casting each time, not ascending, and that is the most consistent way to get Pantera. You're just chaining, crashing into things. It's expensive. It's not always that great, but it is a common thing that win players do, or at least threaten to do to win their games. So, I can have a 1-cost Celestial with 1 spirit and ascend next turn to a 3-cost as long as I add 2 spirits to make it a total of 3 spirits. Sort of. So when you ascend, you always take precisely 1 spirit from your spirit deck, not more, not less. You can ascend 1-cost Celestial to a 3-cost Celestial, but to do that, you either need to take the missing spirit from another Celestial you control, or have the 1-cost Celestial be enchanted with 2 or more spirits. Suffice to say, you can't go from 1 to 3, but you can have a 1-cost Celestial with 2 spirits on it to go to 3. Effectively, you're always trying to ascend into something that is your spirit value or the amount of spirits on the card plus 1 because you add 1 from your spirit deck to ascend, or you can have 2 1-drops, or you can have 3 1-drops and take them from all of it really if you want to ascend. Ascending does get pretty complicated and I can't go all over in just this video, but in short, you need to have enough spirits minus 1 on board on Elestrals in order to ascend into a new Elestral. Take that with a grain of salt. There's some nuances there, but generally it's always basically you need to have at least 2 spirits on Elestrals to get to a 3-drop. On my turn, Paloth attacks my opponent's Viserys while they have Pandora's box set. As the turn player, I activate Paloth's effect. Assuming I activate no more effects, my opponent able to activate both Viserys to special cast from the deck and Pandora's to negate my Paloth. If so, what order must they form a chain? This is definitely a Yu-Gi-Oh player question. So the reason I say it's a Yu-Gi-Oh player question is because there's a thing in Yu-Gi-Oh where you can't respond to Chainlink 1 with Chainlink 3 generally if you're trying to negate an effect on the chain. However, in Elestrals, that doesn't really apply. So I have a Chainlink 1 is my Paloth ability to search, and Pandora's box is I can counter a search effect or negate a search effect. If I go Paloth, quote-unquote, block it with another card. Let's say I'm activating a counter rune or something while Paloth is Chainlink 1. My counter rune is Chainlink 2. My opponent can still Chainlink 3, hit the Paloth with a Pandora's box, and negate that effect. The reason they come up with Viserys here, because the idea is, okay, well, if my opponent has to put their Viserys link onto the Chainlink 2, can they still Pandora's box, or can they go Pandora's box, Chainlink 2, add Viserys after? The answer here for that specific scenario is Paloth in this situation is always going to be Chainlink 1 as the player's Chainlink. Non-turn player Chainlink 2 will be Viserys because both Paloth and Viserys abilities are waiting in limbo before being added to the chain. They must be added to the chain before other effects can be added to the chain link. So chain link 1, Paloth, chain link 2, Viserys, and then chain link 3 could be whatever these players want, including Pandora's box to negate the Paloth. I hope that was clear. That's a lot to understand there, but that's how that works. And lastly, what is the difference between a card that says can only be cast when? Example, Poison Tipped Arrow, and can only be cast after Shield of Achilles. This is actually pretty interesting. So Poison Tipped Arrow needs to be played in a chain that happens in the response window immediately following the event that it cares about. It doesn't need to be the earliest possible timing. Other counter runes can be played earlier in chain links, but once that chain link starts to resolve, it's too late to use PTA. So we talked a lot about the response window in this video. Let's talk about the response window a little bit in depth right now. The response window is a semi-full priority round for players after a card is cast. So in a previous standstill, it was Equalings. So if I cast an Equalings, it hits play, the immediate chain after it hits play is the response window. Players can use counter speed runes, or counter runes in this instance, or other on cast effects. Basically anything that happens as a trigger or happens as a result of I'm casting a counter rune at this speed, and you cannot use you can effect or invoke speed things during the response window. Both players then will pass the response window, and then you have your full normal chain. So in this case, Poison Arrow has to be cast in the response window, where like normal cast triggers happen, special cast triggers happen, receive triggers happen, etc. That's when Poison Arrow has to be cast. You can't wait for those all effects to resolve and then go, I'm actually going to PTA, because by then the chain has resolved and there's no longer a response window. You're in normal priority. It is too late for Poison Arrow. Shields of Achilles and Argo are more relaxed on time, and they can be used at any point within the step, which is the event they care about happens. So with Shield of Achilles and Argo, you generally can let a chain of effects fully resolve from the attack step. As long as you're not actually in battle or whatnot, you can then use in the next chain, and kind of it's looser. So that's the kind of if you do can only be cast after, can only be cast when differences. Definitely a lot of really nuanced questions. Great questions, by the way, guys. Again, there's a lot of nuance here. I think the big takeaway is learn about the response window, and then it might help you a little bit better. But that is me stealing the Twitter thread, Reddit thread bit from MBT for today. If you'd like to participate more, check out the Elestrals Reddit. I will have that link below, and just answer the thread linked at the top. There should be an AMA thread and some other question going on when you check it out. Otherwise, have a great day, guys. Peace.